care for this land, and continue to shape our township. We show our respect and will continually honor the treaties that were signed as we consider our decisions and actions. This morning, there is a public meeting scheduled for one consent application and one minor variance application. Please note that if you wish to be notified of the decision of an application on this agenda this morning, please add your contact information on the sign-in sheet at the Baxter Council chambers, or send us an email. I'll briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the Secretary Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and to whom notice of each of the hearings was circulated for the applications being considered. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any other information that is relevant. The Secretary Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file, and from there the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose. And the public will have an opportunity to speak to the applications being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision of the application. This morning, the consent application schedule is B24-03 for 336 Island 980. And the minor variance application being considered this morning is A24-27 for 192 Trans-Canada Bay Road. And before we begin, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, none online. Seeing none. You would also have had an opportunity to review the minutes of our previous meeting. And I have a motion moved by Member Hazelton, seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of May 16, 2024 as circulated. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. And Madam Secretary, could you advise regarding notifications?
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you. Our first matter this morning is a consent application, number B24-03 for 3346 Island 980. To the planner, please.
Through the chair. The subject lands are two lots forming part of Deer Island, the one lot being municipally known as 3346 Island 980 Georgian Bay has a frontage of 72 meters and an area of approximately 3,500 square meters. This property is developed with a detached dwelling that was constructed in 1996. The property also benefits from legal nonconforming dock rights and thus has boat access. The second lot subject to this application does not have a municipal address as it has not yet been developed. This property has a frontage of 58.7 meters and an area of approximately 64,000 square meters. Both properties are forested with pockets of granite rock. The lands are designated waterfront and are located within the Honey Harbor Coastal Waterfront Community, abutting a wetland that is not provincially significant and type 1 fish habitat. The purpose of this application is to adjust the lot boundary between the subject lands so that the existing legal non-complying detached dwelling is located within one of the property boundaries, whereas it is currently located on both properties. The effect of the application will be to merge the severed lands with the developed property, also referred to as the benefiting lands. To be clear, no new lots are being created as part of this application. Lots within the shoreline residential island type 1 zone are required to have a minimum frontage of 60 meters and a minimum area of 4,000 square meters. The larger of the two properties does not comply with the minimum lot frontage, and the smaller of the two properties does not comply with the minimum lot area. The proposed boundary adjustment will bring both properties into compliance with the zoning bylaw, with the benefiting property having a frontage of 106.5 meters and an area of 2.36 hectares, and the property to be retained having a frontage of 60 meters with an area of 4.42 hectares. A site visit was conducted on May 13th. In accordance with the Planning Act, a council in determining whether provisional consent is to be given shall have regard to matters under subsection 5124, which include whether the proposal is premature or in the public interest, whether the plan conforms to the official plan, the dimensions and shapes of the proposed lots, conservation of natural resources and flood control, etc. Planning staff believe the consent application for a boundary adjustment has appropriate regard to the subsection, and the application also represents good planning as it results in a legal non-complying detached dwelling being located entirely within a property's boundaries, as opposed to the current situation where the dwelling is encroaching onto the abutting property. The application also brings both properties into compliance with the minimum lot area and frontage requirements identified in the township's official plan and zoning bylaw. Planning staff are recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Has there been any correspondence in this application?
The District of Muskoka provided written comments related to future development on the benefiting lands and had no objection to the boundary adjustment. One letter was received from Thomas and Patricia Bain informing staff that they are not opposed to the boundary adjustment, however, brought forward concerns regarding fluctuating water levels and access to the lands. They also requested to be notified of the decision, and one letter of objection was received from Kathy Cooper.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and do they wish to address the committee on this issue? I'm sorry, we have them online. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks.
You're just joining.
Thanks.
Are there any comments you wish to add to what's the planner has supplied so far?
No, thank you. I appreciate the committee's time.
Okay. Is there any member of the public that is present or online that wish to comment on this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Would you please turn on the mic, or maybe Mr. Whitlam would help you with that, and I need your name and address for the record, please.
The microphone's on. Okay, thank you. Probably easier to see that. Yeah. Okay, I own the property on Deer Island, 3982, which is bordered.
And your name, sir, if you don't mind?
James Dillon,
James Dillon.
the property owner of 3982 on Deer Island.
Thank you.
We border on this situation, and I guess we want to get clear on what the property will be used for.
You wanted to, you want to find out what the property is used for?
Yes, the property that you're talking about or discussing in this meeting, what is it going to be used for?
Okay, and that's usually something that you would direct to the applicant, and I'm not sure what the end result of that question is. Are you opposed to a certain type of use, or
Well,
what's the reason for your question?
in every plan ever given anywhere, there's always an ulterior motive. which is usually not explained. So I'd like to know what that is.
Well, I'm not sure how we can answer that, or if there is an ulterior motive, but it would appear that the explanation from the planner was that the owner of that property wants to change the lot line so that he can put the existing dwelling that's on there within the proper boundaries and setback, and thereby, make it meet the requirements of the township.
I can understand that.
We're not aware of any other reason for that.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is there some other reason that is not disclosed at this point?
Well, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
That's all I'm looking for.
Okay. All right. Well, thank
Thank you.
you very much for your question. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to pose a question? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public part of the application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Jarvis.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Appreciate that. Obviously, I think the concept that doing this is good planning makes a lot of sense to me in one context, but in accessing the District of Muskoka GeoHub, if you look at the overhead photos for 2008, and I can't where else 2008 anyway, there's no water in front of that property at all, and I'm worried about how in this specific application hearing we can have some effect on the future of the property, given that in low water it's not accessible. Is that something we can address here, or do we need to address it down the road?
Through the chair, given that there's concerns regarding access to the lands, given the fluctuating water levels on Georgian Bay, staff are proposing that we add a condition requiring the applicant to enter into a consent agreement that will inform current and future property owners of the potential for the fluctuating water levels, and that any works to improve navigation and access would be subject to applicable agency permits, as well as requiring an erosion and sediment control plan to be implemented prior to future development. And that would be in efforts to protect the fish habitat.
Great, and then just leads to one other question, and that's with regards to the fish habitat. What limitations on future development will that FH1 designation for that area, the water area in front of it, have on any dockage and or development on that property in the future?
Through the chair, the applicant would not be able to construct any shoreline structures without Planning Act approvals and approval from the MNRF.
Okay, and then there is currently a dock there, I gather, obviously from your site visit. I didn't dare make a trip up there, so I'm glad you guys did, not me. Is that dock allowed under current situation?
Through the chair, the applicant has been informed that a permit is required. Our records indicate in 2022 they did apply for a permit for the dock. However, planning staff did not issue approval because they were never provided a measurement of the water depth at the end of the dock.
Yep.
And under our current bylaw, they are allowed to extend it to achieve a 1.2 meter water depth to allow for appropriate access. And it was previously determined that the dock replaced one with a legal non-conforming status.
Right. Legal non-conforming, and then the building on the property is legal non-complying? Or is it
Through the
not?
chair, the terms
I
are
just-
interchangeable but mean the same.
But I wanted to deliberately get into the weeds on that. I apologize.
Get in the weeds.
Yes. Yeah, pun intended.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if I had another question. Totally distracted myself. No, I'll leave it for now. Thank you.
You can come back later.
I appreciate
if
that.
you like. Ms. Wanfor, you had mentioned an additional condition. I don't see this on the resolution that we have before us. Is there a revised resolution that you want to put forward before we conclude our review of this particular matter?
Through the chair, if it's in the committee's interest, we can add the condition for the consent agreement. And I do have the wording for the secretary treasurer so that she can add it to the resolution.
Well, timing wise, do you have that electronically or can you print it? Okay, very good. All right, we have that covered. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members on this application? Member Rivet.
Yes, thank you. I'm kind of struggling with this. To me, it's kind of a backhanded way to get development. I know that you said it's no intensification of development, but it actually is. Do we have the map back up? I mean, from my perspective, it's not like we're expanding two developable lots. We're not doing that. We're actually creating a second developable lot because the first parcel isn't developable. Am I wrong in that? It's not large enough. It doesn't have enough shoreline, doesn't have enough frontage or acreage. Or am I missing? I could be misinterpreting that.
Through the chair, both properties are existing lots of record, meaning they were established before the zoning bylaw. To answer your question, the one property being the larger of the two will have no access to create the potential for development. However, the benefiting lands being the smaller of the two where the dwelling is located is being increased and can be developed.
Correct. So we're creating a second developable you could just, that smaller parcel as it sits today, is it large enough to develop? Could you put a dwelling on it?
Through the chair, if I may, to Member Rivet. So the smaller parcel has a dwelling on it now. It's not in great shape, but it's there, right? And the opportunity to rebuild, reconstruct, repair, renovate that dwelling, there are certain rights there already.
I understand that, but my question, as I'm looking at it from the committee as a member, whether or not it's appropriate for the development, because I'm not just looking at the building, because now we're not here to bless a building. We're here to bless a severance. So that's what I'm looking at, a severance. That's what I'm looking at. So as it sits today, is that parcel as it sits, could you put a house on it? Can you put a house and a dock on it today, as it sits today?
So I'll talk to the latter first. So the dock, the access rights are legal non-conforming, and that's been determined through the previous building permit that was issued or processed but not completed by the applicant or by the landowner. I don't know if the lands have changed hands since then, but it's been established that the dock and water access is legal non-conforming. And again, there's a dwelling there already, which those rights can continue. So
It was just built in 96 though, so it would have required a permit, wouldn't it?
sorry,
The building, it was built in 96, so it would have
I'm
required.
sorry, I'm not sure what the date of the
According to the report, it was
is,
built
okay.
in 96. So did it require a permit? In 96? I just want to know.
That's not a detail I'm aware of, that staff are aware of. It's certainly recognized and assessed as having a dwelling on it through impact data. Whether it obtained a permit at the time, I'm not sure. It certainly predates the current zoning bylaw, however.
No, not 96. It should have had a permit.
Yeah, I can only speak to, sorry, through the chair. We have, and I apologize for staff not having the permit detail, but in speaking with building staff, the chief building official is also of the opinion that there's a legal non-conforming dwelling there. But we didn't ask or probably further planning staff in terms of whether or how and when a permit might have been issued for that. But the chief building official indicated that there are rights there because of the presence of the dwelling.
Oh. Fair enough, but we're not here talking about a dwelling. We're here talking about severance. So what I want, and we're here a severance that's going to expand permission. So if the building were not there, I'm just asking to look at the land. Is if there was no building there, and someone was just coming today to say, I want a dock on that remnant parcel and I want to put a building on it, would they get permission to put a building and a dock on that property today? Would they have, is it permitted? That's all I want to know.
Sorry, just consulting with Ms. Wan for on the details. So the lot is undersized, but it is a permitted use. The zoning bylaw does recognize lots that are undersized or lack adequate frontage, so they could put a dwelling on it if they met setbacks. If they were unable to meet setbacks for the dwelling or septic, then they might find, if it was vacant, this is all hypothetical, then they might find themselves before this committee seeking variances, for example. But again, that's overshadowed by the fact that the lands are already developed for a residential use. And to be clear, there's a severance here for a boundary adjustment, so does not meet the definition of development in terms of the provincial policy statement. Boundary adjustments, lot additions are not defined as development from a provincial standpoint.
I suppose, I guess it's perhaps scalable in a condition like this when you're now, I just want you to know if that's, if we're extending rights that didn't exist to that property by the fact of the lot adjustment, because now they've got
Right.
two lots that are potentially sellable as opposed to the one, bush lot that was purchased. So it's creating significant equity for the owner by having two larger developable with nice, lovely shorelines too. My only concern on that other piece is, where will the other dock go for that other, because there's only one dock so far. And in the event that the water levels are low and they do have to dredge, are you saying now that will never happen? Those people will never come forward, or if anybody on that property will not be able to do any of that dredging, right?
So through the chair, so the retained lands under either scenario, whether this is approved or not, the retained lands will continue to have their frontage on the waterfront, right? So that's not changing, and there's nothing proposed on the retained lands at this time. That bridge would have to be crossed by the owner at the time in terms of whether they wish to develop the retained piece as proposed by this application, or even in its present form, because the water frontage is there. But again, that would be a new dock, right? That doesn't benefit from legal non-conforming rights, and they would have to potentially go through a process, potentially a zoning bylaw amendment to consider access. I think, I wonder if it would help the committee to, if staff framed it this way, that to look at it from the perspective of, is it better to have the benefiting lands left in their present form and likely redeveloped in some way as a small lot with all the limitations and potential environmental implications of continuing with the existing residential rights on that property since the dwelling is already there? Is it better to have it developed as a small lot, or is it better to enlarge it to a lot that meets standards, can better accommodate a septic system, et cetera?
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I would vote to have the retained lands assume the benefiting land so that it's just one lot and limit it to one lot. Maybe that's why they built it where they built it. That would be my
If I can interject here, please,
post the question.
Member Rivet.
Thank you.
We're getting a little bit off topic here. The application, the property owner owns two lots right now. He's moving part of one lot to the other in order to make it large enough for him to do some improvements on the existing dwelling, and that's really where this thing lies. So, are there any other questions related?
Hands on the screen.
Okay. Oh, look at the hands. Okay. Member Predko, please.
Thank you, and through you, your Chair. I just had a question, and partially it was answered by the planner, but I would like to go back to the planner with the question about conditions to make it clear for any future owners in development that there are concerns with the accessibility, the water accessibility of this property. And, realizing that this is a boundary change and our ability to apply the standard tests is limited in this case. But I appreciate the conditions that you're proposing to add to the resolution, but I was really just wondering as well about whether or not it would be prudent to put a hold on these properties at the same time to ensure that there was more scrutiny. And if a property was transferred to a new owner, there would be visibility very quickly that there was an issue with the development potential of these lands.
And that question is to the planner,
The planner, yeah.
and will be answered by the planner's assistant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the committee and specifically to the question from Committee Member Predko. So certainly, as you know, the Committee of Adjustment can impose any conditions as it deems appropriate. And that include conditions, and the committee's done this before, where conditions to rezone lands as a condition of consent. We saw that as part of the Baxter Loop applications, right? So certainly the committee could impose a condition that the lands be rezoned to affix a holding provision to something. The merged parcels, I'm not sure where the committee specifically might have an interest in this, but it would be important, I think, also in that condition to speak to what the generally what the conditions for lifting the hold might be. So what are the reasons for the hold, if that's something the committee wishes to consider?
Okay, thank you. We did have other hands up. Did I see Member Schmidt?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just looking at some information here, and it seems to me that this property looks like the second largest landholder on Deer Island, subject only to the association property. This is not a severance. This is a lot adjustment, a lot addition. This is a 17-acre property, and considering the sizes of all of the neighboring properties, I understand the access. I'm glad that the planning department is prepared to put limitations in place and checks and balances and what have you. But this is correcting something, and I certainly don't see an issue with this boundary adjustment. Thank you.
And thank you, Member Schmidt. Do we have anyone else on line with their hand up? Okay. Member Hazelton, you had a question.
Thank you. I would like to ask the planning department a few questions, and I'm trying to determine this from some of the surveys, but you have a lovely diagram in here with a green outline of the benefiting lands, red outline of the severed lands, and a blue outline of the retained lands. And the question relates to frontage. And I know in Honey Harbor, I can't create a new lot unless I have ability to create 400 feet of frontage on the new lot. And I'm looking at these lots, and I'm not sure I'm reading it properly, but I'm seeing one thing that says 60 foot of frontage, and 60 feet of frontage is about 200 feet. I'm wondering how, I'm wondering if this actually complies with the bylaws of severing lands or changing lot frontages, moving lands away into other areas, when we have had situations in the past in Honey Harbor where somebody with 750 feet of shoreline has been prevented from severing their shoreline because they didn't have two full sets of 400 feet. So could you help me with that question?
Through the chair, this is not a lot creation, so it's not subject to new lot creation minimums in the official plan. I can advise that the proposed configuration results in both properties meeting the minimum lot frontage and area requirements in the zoning bylaw, whereas they currently do not.
And the minimum lot frontage is what?
60 meters, through the chair.
Okay. Okay, so that's thank you for that. Next question is docks. So I understand there's a dock there and believe doesn't have a permit, and I believe bylaws working on that now. So I won't deal with that too much, other than to say that, I did read something that said that the applicant, is entitled to put a dock in up to 2.2 meters or something. Did I read that correctly? 1.2 meters of whatever.
Yep.
So we have lots of clauses in our zoning bylaws and plans relating to docks. We have other clauses that say my maximum dock length, I think, is 26 or 27 meters or whatever, some number like that. And we have other clauses that say my dock cannot project within 5 meters of my neighboring property. And I did a little calculation here. Thank you, Google Maps. And the distance from this property to water in low water is somewhere between 150 and 200 meters. So my next question is, in order to get the target depth of whatever it is, 1.2 meters or whatever, I would have to build a 150 or 200 meter dock. First of all, it's probably cost prohibitive. Most of which would be then sitting on dirt. But more importantly, perhaps it's projecting past lot lines of neighboring properties. And so I'm just concerned with the clauses that we are putting out there on what are the constraints here, because there seems to be too many other clauses that would constrain a dock in this scenario, and the depth issue is probably irrelevant. So I'm just asking the question: what other clauses would you consider are equally important to a dock and a depth?
If I might interject before you, I see our director of planning is prepared. This application, we're talking about a lot line adjustment here, and the questions seem to be veering off into conditions that are not affecting that lot line adjustment. I'm just, before you answer the other question, is there a requirement by the township that the lots have some sort of accessibility? I'm assuming that, short of landing a helicopter, does the property have to have access by water or land in order for it to meet any of the township's requirements?
Through the chair. So in order to be developed, yes. So the benefiting lands as they stand now, or if they're merged with the severed lands, those dock rights exist. There's no proposal on the blue piece, the retained lands, or they're in their original configuration. So those lands to be developed, if someone wanted to develop them someday, just as if someone wanted to develop that larger piece now, they may have a challenge in getting a dock and meeting that requirement for access, for sure. But again, the green piece on its own, or the green piece if combined with the red piece, already has legal dock access. Just needs to get a permit for the current reconstruction.
Back to Member Hazelton's question then, and if in fact that right, if you will, applies, that they have access, would Member Hazelton described what might be required in a low water situation. Is in fact that's a possibility that? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So through the chair to the committee, and certainly the topic of the significant fluctuations in Georgian Bay water levels is a topic that's extended beyond this committee and has been had in other forums for sure. The zoning bylaw currently, and it's the same zoning bylaw that's been in place since 2014, and its predecessor, do not distinguish between high water years and low water years. And that's certainly moving forward, as I've addressed other committees and council on. That's been a challenge that's been put to staff to try and come up with better ways of dealing with fluctuating water levels and managing development and access moving forward. But to be clear, the zoning bylaw currently does not distinguish between high or low water level years. So there's no ability from a zoning standpoint to make distinctions in that respect.
So I'm taking from those comments that the property owner has the right to do whatever it takes to get to his property in high water or low water situations.
To the chair, so that's correct, and hence I think the additional condition that Ms. Wanfor has suggested, just to make it abundantly clear to this owner or any future owners by way of a consent agreement registered on title, that water levels do fluctuate, and you know, if there's works, i.e. dredging or other means that need to occur, then there are going to be other agency approvals involved here as well. So
that was going to be my next question. So member Hazelton described a lengthy dock. What approval would the applicant need in order to create a sufficient water depth through dredging or blasting to get access to his property? Is that something that the planning department would approve, or the building department?
thanks. I just wanted, through the chair, wanted to get the right reference. So section 412G of the zoning bylaw, which speaks to existing docks and allows those docks to be extended to achieve that 1.22 meters of water depth. If there was no dock here to begin with, there were no docking rights, and someone wanted to build a dock of some greater length than permitted by the zoning bylaw, they might need a variance, in fact, for a dock of that nature. But again, here we're dealing with potentially existing right. We are dealing with existing rights and lengthening a dock, and it's not subject to length limitations. They're able to extend a dock to achieve the required depth.
Okay, and member Hazelton, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, I know we're talking about a severance and not docks, but I would just like to throw out there a couple of things. There are these other clauses regarding docks. I keep being told by planning staff, not the current one, but previous planning staff, that you don't read the OP of the zoning bylaws line by line. You look at it as a package. There are other clauses on docks that limit to the dock area. There's no way you'd get 150-meter dock to comply with lot area, so the physical size of a dock. So we've got dock length, we've got dock water depth, we've got lot lines getting in the way. All of that, I think, are things of potential constraint. But I want to move on and just say that I love the idea that our planner Shania has suggested here of putting conditions on it. I also like the idea of the hold. I think the hold with conditions is probably an excellent thing. I will say that I have had a lot of community input on this matter. One of the things that one person suggested is that given the location and the unlikelihood that you would ever get a dock that did not have a negative impact on the fish habitat, because we already have a precedent in the township of a requirement to do no harm to a fish habitat when you're putting a dock in. So that would be something of consideration. But somebody suggested the concept of putting an easement in getting access over some other property. And I'm intrigued that Mr. Dillon is here. Perhaps Mr. Dillon wants to provide an easement over his property to give access to the severed property, which touches his property. And that would then be a non-environmental harm strategy for impact or accessing the property. I'm not sure Mr. Dillon wants to do that, but I'm just saying that's the extent of how the community has attempted to solve the environmental negative impacts of any access from a dock to a potential future use property. And I see the only reason why we're considering a severance in my mind is because somebody wants to develop it. That's not in front of us today, I get it, but there would be no need to sever the lands given that the owner owns everything. So it may be technically two lots, but the current owner owns the benefiting lands, the severed piece and the retained piece. And so there is no need for a severance. He could just continue. Anyways, I'll stop. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Put your hand up. I can. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
look, there you are.
Yeah, there I am, smiling face. And I'm wondering if you could help me with the shoreline frontage. I've noticed on lot 3, or slide 3 that you had, it showed it quite well with the nice colors and stuff and the breakdown. And just, I think it's the retained lot is giving land away, but is increasing their lot frontage. And I'm wondering, how do you give stuff away and then end up with a larger lot frontage? Is it just the way you get measured?
Through the chair, the frontage, let me see if I can zoom in.
So that, see, the retained land has a 58.7 meter frontage and it's going to 60, so it's 1.3 meters. But the other one is going up by 40 meters in frontage. And I'm just, I'm kind of wondering how do you get 40 out of 1.3 meters? My math doesn't work on that. So.
Through the
Knew that, okay, yeah.
through the chair, the frontage is measured at the high water marks. You can see there's the 177.4 contour.
Okay,
So for the retained land, it's measured from the spot here
yes.
to over
To right around
here.
there. Okay,
Oh,
and where
I can't
before,
remember.
did it sort of go straight up, I'll say, Shania?
Oh,
Yes,
And-
probably.
sorry, through the chair, the existing frontage,
Is that way?
it's kind of hard to show, but
Yeah.
is
No,
measured
sort of
from
straight up.
here
Yep.
to this point here.
Right, okay. Magic how,
Move the line and get more distance.
yeah. And so then for the benefiting lands, I guess it's just because of that extra red line practically that's adding the extra 40 meters roughly, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. So yeah, I guess getting back to Member Schmidt's comment, this is just a severance. This is not creating new lots. I do have concerns about future development, I will say. And I guess the question is, if this went through, would the owner have the right to dredge?
Through the chair, the answer to that question is no. They would require approval from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. And through the consent agreement, should we choose to add that as a condition, they would also be informed of this requirement. And it would be registered on title. So if the land were to change hands, the future property owner would be aware of this as well.
Okay. I see it then from that perspective, there is protection and it's a boundary adjustment. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Member Jarvis.
Remember what I was going to ask. Something came up in some of the correspondence I saw or in discussions I had with somebody else. The M&R has yet there was comment requested from the M&R on this application, and to date there's been no comment from the M&R. Should we be proceeding despite the fact that we have not heard yet from the M&R on this? And that's just a cautionary comment.
Through the chair, under the provincial policy statement, this is not considered development, and perhaps that's why they are not providing comments. But I did reach out to them within the past, I'm going to say almost 3 months, and did not receive any acknowledgement, response, phone calls, nothing. So I take that as they do not have an interest in the matter right now.
Gotta love the M&R. Again, though, my question still applies, should we still be waiting for, I mean, would it be appropriate policy to wait for comment, or is it not, it's not required, right? Okay.
Yeah, no news is good news. Very well. If there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Moved by member Rivet, seconded by member Jarvis. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval to consent application B24-03 for a boundary adjustment as shown on Schedule A, subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property subject to this decision. Two, that a draft reference plan be completed by an Ontario land surveyor and a digital copy filed with the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment. Three, that a copy of the deposited reference plan be provided to the Secretary Treasurer. Four, that a draft transfer be prepared by a solicitor and submitted to the Secretary Treasurer in preparation for the creation of a certificate of official describing the parcels created by consent. And five, that the property owner apply for a deeming bylaw at the sole cost of the owner. Deeming lots 18 and 19 on Plan 1 not to be a plan of subdivision. The deeming bylaw must be approved by the township, registered on title at the cost of the owner, and the solicitor for the owner shall provide an undertaking that the deeming bylaw be registered prior to the certification registration of any transfer deeds. And six, that all fees and disbursements, legal, engineering, planning, if any, occurred by the township with respect to this application be paid for by respective owners. And number 7,
that the owner enter into an agreement with the township for the purpose of informing current and future landowners of the potential for fluctuating water levels, and that any works to improve navigation and access would be subject to applicable agency permits, as well as including the requirement for an erosion and sediment control plan to be implemented prior to future development.
thank you.
Could we add to those conditions? I heard that there was a appetite for establishing a hold that would have these conditions. So I think it would be useful to establish the hold, add those conditions, and I think we would want to specifically add a condition that a fish habitat impact assessment be included in that criteria, given that the entire bay is an F1 fish habitat.
I'm gonna just check with our manager of planning as to whether or not it's within the purview of the Committee of Adjustment to add a designation of hold to an application. You know, an application that's requesting a consent.
Yeah, through the chair to the committee. So as far as the rest of the conditions, the hold would not be required to impose the agreement or any of that sort of thing. So I think I heard the interest in the hold from member Hazelton might be for a fish habitat assessment. Again, that the docking rights exist. If somebody was proposing works in the water body, dredging, etc., and applied for a permit through applicable agencies, MNRF, DFO could be involved, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, their requirements would kick in. So I'm not sure what would be achieved by the hold at this time. But again, if the committee does wish to impose a hold, I think it's important to state what the reasons, how the applicant could remove the hold, right? What we're getting from it.
I personally feel very strongly that a hold is a well understood label that has implications of other conditions, and sadly other conditions seem to not always be front and center. So I think a hold with conditions as outlined, but with the addition of an F1 fish habitat impact assessment, which again, that we understand what that is, and we understand that has value to the township and to the residents in the protection of the environment. And we also understand that some of the other ministries don't always aren't always there when you need them. So let's take control of this matter as a township and put a hold on it and put these criteria in there so that we don't pass the buck on to other government agencies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have member Predko, who was recommending the hold in the first place, who would like to add something. So go ahead, member Predko.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And through you to the Director of Planning, would it be feasible or straightforward to have a hold that just reiterated the conditions that are on the decision today? Since those will, all in likelihood, we could add the fish habitat study, but in all likelihood, they will all be met if they're going to do any development anyway. But I think to Member Hazelton's point, I think having a hold on a property is a visual marker that's easy for people to see, especially during a sale transaction.
Okay, Mr. Whitler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to be clear, with the hold, a hold is essentially, holding provision is essentially a check valve. It says that before the hold is lifted, something needs to be done. And what the hold does, the presence of a hold on a property would prevent the issuance of a building permit. Okay, so there's two potential building permits at play here. Should the applicant wish to repair, renovate, enlarge the existing dwelling, replace, that would trigger a building permit. The hold would preclude that happening until the hold is lifted. The other permit at play here is for a dock permit, a building permit for a dock. The docking situation being legal non-conforming, even with a holding provision, the dock could, subject to a design that meets, requirements, the permit would have to be issued for the dock. So again, I'm not sure how we use the hold in a way that achieves good planning, and that is, quite frankly, defensible.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And just so that we're clear on that, the hold would not provide a barrier for the applicant to proceed with changing the dock or having changes to the accessibility of the property. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, there are legal non-conforming rights associated with the dock. The current dock itself still needs a permit because it was replaced without a permit, but that didn't extinguish those rights. And again, there are legal non-conforming rights with the existing dwelling. So the hold may be more symbolic than actually achieving anything. But again, if the committee wishes to proceed with a hold, I think then it needs to be stated what is required to remove the hold, what the committee sees as the reasons for the hold are.
Okay. I would like to move forward, but before we do so, I'd like to go back to member Predko and just, where the idea of the hold originated. And was it your objective to restrict any development, or I shouldn't say development, not development, but any work being done with the dock or anything related to water access?
No, I think the condition provided by the planner as the seventh provision in the motion deals with what my concern would be. My suggestion was merely to make sure. I think sometimes we have had in the township instances where there has been something put on title that has been missed by the purchasers of a property that has made it impossible for them to develop on, and then we get involved in other issues with planning down the road, trying to address the fact that they weren't aware of what those issues were with the property before they purchased them. So my suggestion on the hold and just reiterating the conditions that are on the resolution today would be to make sure that any purchaser would be aware of the conditions that are on this property. And whether or not that's good planning or not good planning, I'm not sure. But that's more for the transparency of the property and future owners.
Okay, and with that in mind, you'll recall member Whitlow had mentioned that if the applicant wants to do any repairs or any work on the existing structure that's on the property, the hold would prevent him from doing that. And it was that part of your intention as well, is to prevent any further development there, or not development?
I'm not opposed to repair within what's permitted by the rights they have on the property. It was more to do with new owners that might acquire the property.
Okay, then my understanding is the hold would stop everything and prevent the applicant from doing any repairs on his property. And I get the feeling that that's not your intent.
Not my primary intent, no.
Okay.
So I'm satisfied with the conditions in the resolution without the hold, but that had been my intent to make it more transparent for future purchasers.
No, well noted, and we have that additional condition added by the planning department that seems to encompass the other concerns that were there. I see one remaining. Oh, I see two remaining hands up. Member Schmidt, please.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Member Predko's comments that I think that the provisions put into place by the planning department, I think suffice for what's required for this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I see a hand up from Member Hazelton.
Kaylee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Was that your question?
No. So just a quick question. From a building department standpoint, what rights does the owner have to repair his existing structure without going through planning approvals or anything else?
Every right. He has a right to repair the building in
Okay.
question.
Thank you. Okay, so
I think what he was really asking is, does he need a permit to do that?
Yes, through you, Chair, he does need a permit.
Okay.
but the hold doesn't prevent the permit, does it?
Through the chair, so imposing a hold would add a further zoning restriction after the fact. It would not extinguish those rights that already exist. And to the other comment, the hold is not required to ensure that the development agreement occurs and future owners are made aware of through, so it wouldn't accomplish anything there either. So imposing a hold would not extinguish the rights for them to do what they can already do. So it would add a layer, but it wouldn't, I don't believe, achieve anything.
Okay, so it won't prevent them from doing the things that they're trying to do. I'm still extremely supportive and feel strongly that the hold needs to be there for all of the reasons that we've talked about. I guess one of the things that we should be considering here is if we truly are interested in protecting the environment, and I think that's, of course, the #1 strategy of the township, and that's what all of the community input provided. Then the conditions that we're talking about and the hold kind of makes it extremely visible. The conditions, I think, are extremely valuable. I hope that we have fish habitat impact assessment listed in there. Given that one of the communications that came in indicated that section of the center areas of Deer Island are generally extensive wetlands. There probably should also be a species at risk study required, because let's face it, if the current owner wants to make the place usable, I think that we want him to do it with all of the safety valves, so to speak, in place from an environmental standpoint. And I think that that's really where we're going on this. It's, you know, fine, sever the property, but help everybody get comfortable with the fact that you're going to maintain environmental focus. Looks like we have lots of other side conversations going on here.
All right, thank you very much, Member Hazelton, and we would like to move forward with this application. I think everybody's had an opportunity to voice any concerns that they may have. I think the impression I get from everyone present and online is that we're good to go with the conditions, including the additional condition provided by the planning department. And again, just so we're not going to take more time and get into a further discussion, I would, I'm not asking for a vote, but just an indication how many of the members of committee feel it's necessary on top of the conditions that have been recommended on this application that we have a hold. If we do, then we're going to need some definition of that hold, how it's what conditions need to be met in order for the hold to be lifted. And if we have a majority or a large number of people who want to hold, then we'll take a pause and we'll come up with that wording. So I would just ask by indication with your raising your hand, how many feel a hold is needed to be added to what we have already? And I see one, I see two hands only. So I am going to go, I am going to not include the hold in this. Keep in mind that we have at the recommendation of the Director of Planning covered all assets here, or all avenues here that would make sure that we've touched all bases. The only other condition that I might add, as Member Hazelton requested, was the need for a fish. Yeah, if that zoning is there already, do we need to have an assessment? It seems like it's already in place.
If you don't put it in explicitly, then it can be accidentally missed. In other words, we need something to trigger it. And we are at a point where it's right in front of us. Let's put it in there and trigger it.
I'm getting some feedback from planning. Are we missing something here? Is there more to this than just adding that comment? And can you clarify that?
Yeah, so to be clear, if there were no docking rights here and somebody wanted to propose a dock in a F1 fish habitat, they would, for example, need a zoning bylaw amendment, and as part of that zoning bylaw amendment, they would need a fish habitat assessment. But the docking rights already exist. So I would caution against trying to utilize a hold to impose a requirement that would not already be required.
And I understand that, but I guess my concern is we are not dealing with a normal docking like access scenario where in a reasonable distance somebody might actually build a dock and get to the property. So I think that what we want to do is, again, being environmentally focused, let's say, you know, if the guy wants to build a dock and he wants to build a 150-meter dock, let's make sure that he's not going to destroy the wetland in doing so, because we already know that the owner of the property, not the current owner, but the previous owner, was taking a small tinny boat in there with a 10 horsepower and tying it up to the dock and dredging the bay with the motor on the boat. So we already know what has been done in there to essentially gain access. And with that kind of scenario, let's put a clause in there that reflects our environmental strategy.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Hazelton. At this point, thank you. Thank you. I don't see any hands up. Okay, his hand is down. Okay, I have already read the existing resolution that we have. If in fact we want to add to that, we can do so as a separate resolution. And so I get head shaking.
Can I?
Now, we're gonna have to go on.
Sorry, I guess I'm looking.
This year. So you guys want to take time out to discuss this or? Okay.
I think I'm looking at the clerk and I think the resolution needs to be voted on.
Yeah, so through the chair, can I speak?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Through the chair. So what I suggested is obviously there's some discussion going on. I think we should just read the resolution as is. And then if we want to read a separate resolution outlining the additional condition, it could pass or get defeated. We'll just see how it goes instead of going around in circles. And I think that's probably the best way forward instead of including it into the original motion.
So normal meeting protocol would suggest we have a friendly amendment, vote on the friendly amendment, and then move with the resolution at hand. So
Is that an official term?
we use that in council on a regular basis.
My only concern with this is I just don't want the full resolution to be defeated if they're not wanting to vote on. So if we have a friendlier amendment and add it as an additional condition, you're then now voting on that entire resolution as a full. So if one member is not in agreement with that one resolution or one condition, you're now defeating a whole resolution. Does that make sense?
Not normally, you can defeat a friendly resolution and still go back and vote on the main motion.
Well.
Usually,
Executive decision here. We have in front of us a resolution. Originally had 6 conditions and now has 7. We have had discussion and a friendly vote, our friendly discussion about the hold, which I think we agree that is not necessary. And the recommendation from our director of planning has explained why the fish habitat assessment would not give the desired effect that I believe the membership was looking for. So based on that, I will read for a second time the resolution that we have, and we will vote.
I think all we need to do is the additional condition would be on.
The number 7? Okay, are we good with that?
And that is?
All right, number 7, Madam Secretary, please.
That the owner enter into an agreement with the agreement with the township for the purpose of informing current and future landowners of the potential for fluctuating water levels, and that any works to improve navigation and access would be subject to applicable agency permits, as well as including the requirement for an erosion and sediment control plan to be implemented prior to future development.
And I think we'll agree that that covers everything that everybody was hoping to get. So based on that, I will ask all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the motion is carried. The application is
Are we
approved.
going to have the fish habitat as a separate resolution as you promised?
Not promised. It was included in number 7, as you can see.
I didn't hear it in number 7.
Well, we have approved this. The decision was made.
Hold
in
on.
there.
We want to get clarity. We don't have a written document in front of us. All we have is an auditory thing. So if I could ask the clerk to read that auditory thing again.
Okay, it'll carry on.
Through the chair, the fish habitat study is not included in condition number 7. So if that is something that the committee wants to have as an additional condition, we will have to call on another vote. So I would suggest another resolution. So,
Thank you.
Didn't we already do that?
no, we have not done that. So the just
Okay,
erosion and sediment control plan. So I don't believe, if planning can correct me, but I don't believe that's the same as a fish habitat study.
Excuse me, Chair Hill.
do you wish to give me the wording for that resolution and we'll ask it right now?
So I would suggest reading the first paragraph of the resolution and then just adding that additional condition there. So
Excuse me, Chair Hill.
Okay. So this, go ahead, Member Schmidt.
I thought when we were reading through that resolution and through the our planning staff, it was recommended that this fish study was not something that necessarily needed to be and the appropriate rights of that property owner docking. I thought we said that wasn't needed, and that's what I voted in favor of. We voted it as the added number 7, and that was sufficient protection to do this and move on.
I was of the same opinion, but you know, we have rules to follow. Our Secretary Treasurer recommending that we identify this specifically and vote on it, and that's what we will do. So I will read the additional condition, and be it resolved that it's. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. Member Whitlam, or Mr. Whitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm struggling to, and I just want to make sure that this is structured correctly to protect the interests of the township in terms of where this might go following a decision. So currently there's no trigger by this application for a fish habitat assessment, for any sort of terrestrial or species at risk assessment, or any other environmental assessment. So if the committee attaches a condition requiring an assessment, there's no planning trigger for it. So that would be.
I'm sorry, there's no planning
trigger for that assessment. If the committee nevertheless wants to make that requirement, it probably does not belong in the consent agreement. It belongs as a condition, a condition of its own requiring that a fish habitat assessment. But again, the committee would be making that, including that, or proceeding on that basis with the knowledge that there is no planning act or official plan trigger for requiring a fish habitat assessment.
Thank you, Member Whitlam. So, Madam Secretary, our Director of Planning is.
Chair Hill, if I could, our Director of Planning is not saying we don't need it. He's saying that there is no planning trigger to create a need for it. In other words, there is by a lay observation, a need for the fish habitat impact assessment if somebody is going to try to put a dock in 150 meter, 200 meter F1 fish habitat. But the point is, there is no planning instrument that will trigger that, which is why I think this is really critical that we put this condition on this property so that we are protecting that F1 fish habitat.
Okay, I hear you loud and clear. We already had that discussion. I asked all of the members of the committee how many people were interested in the fish habitat assessment. 2 out of the 7.
No, that was the whole, not the fish habitat.
Okay, then I'll ask the question in the same manner. How many of the committee members are interested in adding a condition for a fish habitat assessment? Please indicate by raising your hand. I see 2. I see 2. Yes, you may.
So I'll ask
Oh, your microphone, and you're here.
in my hearing aids, okay. Director Whitworth, I'm confused as to this, what the fish habitat assessment would do. When would that kick in? You're saying there's no planning action that it would kick in. So I'm all for protecting the environment. I think we're all out for protecting fish. But if we put this in place, how is it going to get triggered?
To the chair, I don't know.
Okay.
So I cannot vote on something that doesn't have an end date.
Just full clarity. So again, if there was an approval required from a provincial agency, example MNRF, for in-water works for a dock, then they could have requirements as part of their permit process, whatever those may be. Could be a fish habitat assessment, I don't know. But there's nothing that gives support to the township asking for a fish habitat assessment at this time. It's not in our official plan. It's not in the district official plan. There's no provincial trigger through the provincial policy statement.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And seeing no further questions, I'll just reiterate that we have read the resolution with the 7 conditions. The committee has voted unanimously in approval of that application. And subsequent vote for fish habitat study was not supported. So in summary, the application has been application B24-03 for the boundary adjustment is hereby approved. The matter is closed, and strongly recommended request from one of our members is that we will be taking a 10-minute break and we will return at 11:30. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and we are back in session, and our next application is minor variance application A24-27. To the planner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just bringing up my screen now. It won't work, Shania.
Yep.
Yep.
You have to go play.
There we go. I apologize for that little technical error. The next item on the agenda is application A2427, with the property being 192 Trans-Canada Bay Road. The subject property is noted on the map on the screen, and as you can see, it's a fairly substantially sized piece of property on the water. An application for a minor variance was received by the township on April the 11th, 2024, following a pre-application consultation in September 2023. This pre-application consultation was to address the non-complying decks that were constructed by the previous owners. It was determined that a minor variance would be required as the decks were constructed too close to the high water mark. Further consultation took place with the applicant in order to include an attached garage and additional habitable space to the minor variance request. The subject property is 0.26 hectares with a frontage on 6 Mile Lake of 47.24 meters. At the present time, there is a 143 square meter dwelling and a 10.22 square meter cabin, according to MPAC. The shoreline decks were constructed by the previous owner without regard for an application for a permit. They were built within the front yard and maximum yard projection. The maximum projection permitted is 4 meters, whereas the two lower decks project into the setback by 17.51 meters, providing a setback to the high water mark of 2.49 meters at its closest point. As you can see on the picture above, this is the proposed layout of what will be completed once the development is completed. The addition of an attached garage and the enclosure of existing decks for living space will provide the owners with additional habitable space. The new garage is to be connected to the main dwelling by a covered breezeway. The building department has identified the existing cottage as being located too close to Hydro One's transmission line, which has been confirmed by Hydro One. This is a historical matter dating back to the late 1950s. Therefore, the building department has noted that relocation of the Hydro One transmission line further away from the existing dwelling must be implemented prior to the applicant applying for a new building permit, or the location of the proposed addition must be altered. Hydro One has commenced the process with the applicant to bring the distance separation into compliance. Section 6.3, Table 6.2 outlines the provisions relating to development within the SR6 zone, and at the present time, the total lot coverage is approximately 7.49%, with the new development bringing the lot coverage total to 12.3%. The maximum permitted as per Section 6.3, Table 6.2 is 8%. Therefore, a variance is required in order to move forward with the new construction. Section 6.41B stipulates the maximum GFA of a dwelling in the SR6 on a property that is less than 4,000 square meters is to be 190 square meters. The existing dwelling is 121 square meters, and the construction of a new garage and the additional habitable space will bring the GFA to 288 square meters. Section 642A stipulates the maximum width of a dwelling in the SR6 zone, which is 25% of the lot frontage, or 23 meters, whichever is more restrictive. Based on the lot frontage calculation, the width of the dwelling with the garage addition cannot exceed 11.81 meters, whereas the owner is proposing a width of 24.92 meters. I have listed the variance requests on the screen. As you can see, there are 4 requests under Section 45.1, and then there are 2 additional requests under Section 45.2 of the Planning Act. Committee of Adjustment does have options when it comes to the decision on this matter. They can approve the application as recommended by planning staff, deny the application with reasons, or defer the application with reasons, identifying the additional information or actions that the Committee of Adjustment considers necessary to make a decision. The committee may also approve, deny, or defer the variances requested individually. The proposed development is in keeping with existing development in the area. There will be no negative impacts to the neighboring properties, and the owner is working with Hydro One to remedy the issues with the overhead line. Staff are recommending approval of all variances being requested based on a review of the relevant policies in the official plan. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement and meets section 45(1) and 45(2) of the Planning Act, and in my opinion, represents good planning.
3 letters of support were received from R.D. Smith, Alex Kim and Ann Millens, and Gary Jarvis.
Yes, thank you. My name is Vaughn Bender. I am the applicant. My wife and I bought the cottage in 2018 as described by staff. I'm wondering if somebody can help me just get this. I have a little bit of a slideshow here of some further pictures.
Bottom of the screen, you'll click the green button that says share screen.
You'll indulge me. I know there's a lot of slides here. I'll move through them quite
Yeah,
quickly.
hopefully you're not repeating anything that the planner has provided already. As you can see, we're running a little short on time. Thanks.
Appreciate that. So this is the cottage in 2018, and as indicated, there was an open building permit. We were aware of that at the time, but we could not get the information at that time as to what the violations or the incompleted items were. We did not know there were violations, I guess, but we knew it was an open building permit. It was as is, where is, and we went into that with our eyes open. So I want to acknowledge that. This is what it looks like today. And sorry, I just wanted to indicate as well, this open space to the left of the cottage where the addition is proposed was open when we purchased the cottage. I don't need to go through these visuals that are part of the package you received. Just noting some comments from neighbors, I just wanted to point out where our cottage is, 192, our neighbor to the left on this slide, 204, and then Crown Land to our right, and the neighboring cottage at 96, which is around the bend, and our cottage is not visible from that location. This is a visual from the lake, indicating where those same property lines are. Closer up, our only neighbor really, other than Crown Land to the right, when looking at this from the water side. We have, I will say, good compatibility with our neighbor. We unfortunately lost a dozen or 15 trees during the gypsy moth era. But last fall, we replaced about 40 trees on our property. Some as large as 16 and 19-foot trees that we planted. So that is now the screening again, once again to our neighbor, where a good number of trees were lost. And we have good separation from the Crown Land, and we're not proposing to expand on the Crown Land side. All of the open space. The hydro line issue was a surprise. I mean, I appreciate all of the support, the assistance I've received from planning staff and the building department on a site visit. The hydro line question was raised. I'd never really thought about it because the line is very high on our property. And long story short, there's an existing condition that's of concern to hydro, and they have already staked out a new pole location. So whether or not this minor variance even proceeds, they want the hydro concern, I'll say, addressed, and that appears to be in motion. When I arrived last night, there were stakes in the ground from Hydro as well as Bell Canada, because it's actually a Bell Canada line where Hydro has an easement on the Bell Canada line. And so it appears they've already laid out where the new line will be. And it will provide 4 meters of separation from our existing cottage and 5.5 and 6 meters respectively from the proposed addition, which, and the requirement is 3.8. Again, photos of it laid out. 3 trees would be impacted by this proposed addition. There's measurements of those trees. That's the existing deck, and again, I don't need to belabor that, but I'm happy to go back if anybody has any questions. Again, yeah, the hydro issue. The pole was installed, as I understand it, in 54. The easement put in place in 1956, and the cottage built in its original location where it still stands today, 1959. So how this occurred, I cannot explain, but it appears the remedy is about to happen. And I'm skipping ahead again to, I know there's been a lot of discussion on the lake on 6 Mile Lake regarding larger cottages and so on. And I appreciate the effort and the long process that has, and the investment that many people have made into that debate. I respectfully submit that this proposal does have regard to environmental and visual impact. We've maximized the setback from the lake, acknowledging on the other side the hydro line constraint. We've placed a lot of trees in the open space next to us. I think we have had regard to the integrity of the natural area. We proposed the expansion on the west side, not on the east side toward the Crown land and the high soaring rock outcropping there known as Jenny's Rock. The visual impact has been mitigated through the additional trees, and we will continue to plant trees on our property moving forward. It's a shot from the other night. And I'll leave that on the slide. On the screen, if there's any questions I could answer.
Okay, thank you. First of all, for your brevity, Mr. Bender, and I must say that was an excellent presentation. Certainly visuals there that even though I'm sure most of us had visited the property, certainly the showing where the property line is and where that sits in relation to that was very beneficial. So thank you for a job well done.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public who wishes to address this application? Okay, I'm counting on you if anybody's online. So seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McCabe, I guess the question, the decks that are there now, do they count as GFA or are they being added because they're being enclosed?
That's correct. The second part you said, because they're being enclosed, they have to be included in the GFA.
Yeah.
If they're open decks, then no.
They're open decks and not.
That's correct.
Or whatever it is. 'Cause percentage wise, it's a scary.
Oh, it is, but basically they're decks that are already there that are going to be made into habitable space by closing them in.
Right. Okay. That's no, I had a site visit and I do commend Mr. Bender or your contractor, whoever. It was nicely marked out, blue lines and, danger hydro here and that sort of thing. It was one of the better site visits that I've been on. So thank you for that.
Very well done. Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Jarvis, please.
Yeah, I obviously not everything's being enclosed deck wise, but some are, and some of the decks that are being closed are decks that are encroaching into the waterfront area. And I see that as further aggravation of a situation that obviously was not of the current owner's intention, but I can't understand how we would be just aggravating that situation as it currently stands. It does lead to another question though, and that's with regards to the garage to the current property owner and or planning. was the option of moving the garage to the back of the property investigated at all? So that it wasn't it factored in as part of the width on the cottage and on the property?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Bender obviously can justify what his intent was, but as you can see that behind the cottage is where the septic system is, number one. And also the fact that they wanted the garage to be attached, not detached. So that's why he chose that area, because I mean, to attach a garage at the rear would not give him enough room. If you look at the actual picture, behind the cottage.
No, I understand, but the visual aspect, say from the water, would be significantly reduced if you had the cottage behind the building as a separate entity, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, yes, you're correct. However, there is the fact that the septic system is back there as well.
The question just pursuant to that is, if the garage had been a separate entity proposed towards the back of the property, how would that affect lot coverage, et cetera, with regards to the request? It would have any net effect on what's being asked for, or would be the same?
Be the same.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was there something you wish to add, Mr. Bender?
If I may, just that if we were to, this would be, I think, the only spot that would be an opportunity, given the hydro constraint, the septic, and so on. You know, that is a fully treed area. There's also a grade change from the laneway, you know, up into that area of the property. I would think as well, if we did a standalone garage and then an addition of habitable space, it would actually add to the GFA. You know, so
Okay.
obviously depending on size.
Yep, very good. Any other questions or comments? Anything online? Okay.
Yes, no, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Member Petco.
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought my electronic hand and my physical hand were raised, but just my physical hand. So appreciate you recognizing me, Chair. And questions very similar about the placement, the setbacks, and the garage to the planner. So right now we have an attached garage. Could you confirm with the current definition of GFA in the 6 Mile community that if that was a detached garage, would that structure be removed from the GFA calculation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be removed from the GFA, but it would not be removed from the lot coverage.
Right, that's what be my understanding. And then as well, right now you have listed some of the areas that they're looking for relief on as being the deck setback. But not the dwelling setback from the lakefront. And is that because the deck was built as a non-conforming or a non-conforming structure, or is that in the building itself is going to have the same footprint as the original cottage? I'm just curious as to why we're not looking for relief on the setback from on the waterfront side.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's nothing changing on the waterfront side. The 2 decks that are subject to the variance requests are the longer decks that project closer down to the water. That they did have a building permit, however, they did not build them according to what was approved in the permit. So Mr. Bender, as the new owner, wanted to clean all that up in order to close the permit. And that's when we met and we discussed, and I said to him, I said, if you are going to go through this process of already, you know, addressing these setbacks that weren't built according to what they should be, then if you have any future plans or any plans at all, you might as well do it all under one variance. So that was the intent of why he came forward. Now, in regards to the dwelling itself, the actual footprint of the dwelling is not changing. It's the same. It's a legal non-complying dwelling. It's been there since the 50s. So
yeah, I just wasn't sure because of the garage, if the garage portion would, since it's also, I think, maybe still encroaching on the 20-meter mark. I wasn't sure whether or not that was an issue. And then the last piece of my question on this is, again, if the garage was not attached to the dwelling, would the frontage the width, would that be a problem as well, or within that, because there are two different structures, would that then not be an issue for this minor variance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it wouldn't be an issue, Member Predko, only because it's two separate structures at that point.
Okay, just making sure my understanding is correct on the design and the implication it has on our bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Schmidt.
I wanted to echo the comments of Member Matthews. Thank you very much for taking the time to lay that property out so well. The other thing I noted on your photos from the water would be in the least amount of tree foliage time of the year. Now that the trees have filled in and the way that is set back in behind. And I think that the color change that you're proposing there would certainly bring a net effect of muting that the building on the lake. But you bought yourself a project and you've done a fantastic job bringing that into closer to compliance. But thank you.
Thank you. And your hand is still up there, Member Schmidt. Are there any other questions or comments on this application? Okay, seeing none, I'm sorry.
Quick, okay.
Member Predko again?
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me, Chair. And just one last question about the dock, and I guess it's not really an issue for today, but it looks like that crib dock has adapter for floating extension. And is that part of the current dock design, or is that I mean, it's not really an issue for today, so I won't worry about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A24-27 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 192 Trans-Canada Bay Road to facilitate a garage addition and enclose open decks on the legal non-complying dwelling incorporating a den, dining room, and mudroom, as well as recognizing the non-complying deck projection to the high water mark. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. First, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision, and that this decision applies only to the proposed building as indicated in attachment 2, attached to and forming part of this decision. Any other variances that may appear in the schedules that are not listed in the written decision are not authorized. And that this decision expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for this development. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay, and online, the application is, the motion is carried unanimously. The application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Bender. Thank you. Our next and final application today is in fact a modification to an existing application that we had. Yeah, in March. It was consent applications B23-32, 33, and 34. And the request is to eliminate one of the conditions of that application. And I will defer to the planning department for a bit of background on the reason for this request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm not going to go through my whole report because I believe my report was pretty self-explanatory. I included things from the Planning Act as well as information that was provided to me by our Director of Finance in regards to this requirement of a cash in lieu of parkland. A request was made to council by the applicant to provide direction to the Committee of Adjustment to consider the removal of condition number 6 as it relates to the payment of a 5% in lieu of parkland dedication. And a written request was received by staff on May the 14th by the applicant requesting the Committee of Adjustment consider the removal of condition number 6, as the owner is conveying to the township a 20-meter wide right-of-way containing the traveled portion of Baxter Loop Road that traverses the property. And as you can see in my report, I did give some history on the application process and what transpired with these applications. The zoning bylaw amendment was approved at Planning Council this past Tuesday in regards to rezoning the property to be in compliance with the environmental impact study that was prepared. Basically, the justification, as I stated, behind this request was the removal of the cash in lieu of parkland fee, as the conveyance of Baxter Loop Road is part of one of the other conditions. The township does retain cash in lieu of parkland contributions in a reserve fund, and I have included a number of properties, municipal properties and work that has been done using that parkland fund. And without this type of reserve fund, it'd be difficult for the municipality to provide the funds necessary to continue the ongoing maintenance and upgrade of specific properties. So at this time, I mean, I will let obviously the applicant's agent, who I believe is online, speak to the committee on this consideration, but I would like to make it known that staff are not in favor of this, as it is a requirement for development and given the opportunity under the Planning Act. And this is development by creating the new lots, and without the Baxter Loop Road being a municipal road, the 4 lots would not have been approved because they wouldn't have road frontage.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant, I understand the applicant's representative is online. If so, please identify yourself with your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Andrew Pescuzzo. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
My name is Andrew Pescuzzo. I'm a registered professional planner here today on behalf of my client and the owner of the property, Vince Cartier. I'm not sure whether Vince may be in the audience still or not. I know this is a bit of a longer meeting, so I'm not sure if he stuck around. The purpose of me participating today is to specifically request that the committee consider removing the condition related to 5% cash in lieu of parkland, as Deb has indicated and has been very detailed and helpful as always. So I want to thank her again. This request was related to the fact that my client is already being required, as has been indicated, to dedicate a very large portion of Baxter Loop Road. This is well beyond the 5%. It's closer to 20%. You may recall that staff advised this committee of adjustment back in March that council would need to make a decision on this specific item. So then we went to council and we asked for council to consider the removal of the 5% cash in lieu of parkland. And at that council meeting, staff then advised that we would need to go back to the committee of adjustment to request the removal of the 5% cash in lieu of parkland contribution. Needless to say, my client and I are a little bit frustrated by the additional time and process on this item. This is concerning because staff are basically saying that my client should dedicate 20% of his property to the township for free, and then he should then go beyond that and pay the additional 5% for cash in lieu of parkland. This doesn't seem fair to me or my client. So I've read the staff report. It's my understanding that it recommends refusal, specifically because my client did not appeal the consent conditions when they were previously approved. Once again, this is concerning to me because that is not what's happened here. We were directed to go to council to get a response from council on this item. My client and I have formally requested now that staff eliminate the condition related to cash in lieu of parkland. Then we made the same request to this committee and then again to council. And now we're back to the committee, and we hope that the committee will modify the previous decision and remove the 5% cash in lieu of parkland condition, as is included as option 2 within the staff report. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I'm obviously here to answer any questions on behalf of my client.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there will be questions. Is there any member of the public in attendance that wishes to address the committee on this application? Anybody online? Okay, not seeing any. I have just one very quick question before we open it up to the committee for questions, and it has to do with the timing. You were saying that you had 20 days, but you didn't take advantage of that because you were instructed to apply to planning council. And was that the application submitted during that 20-day period?
Mr. Chair, I think it's important to note that staff had, we've been requesting this item from staff since the day we made the submission. We met with your director of planning, we met with planning staff, we met with your clerk. We've been consistently requesting that the condition related to cash in lieu of parkland not be included. I don't recall as to whether I submitted a formal request after the decision of the March 7th meeting. I can tell you with confidence that I did it verbally and in writing in advance of the March 7th decision, though. And at the meeting verbally. So
thank you. Seeing no questions or from the public, I'll close the public session, bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And Member Jarvis, please.
Out of curiosity, this 5%, how much in dollars and cents does this amount to in this case?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we won't know until the appraisals are done.
Do we have an approximation?
Hard to say. It's going to be based on a number of things, the size of the lots and lots in the area. So I'm being honest. I honestly don't know.
So it's 5% of the value of the lot, right?
Of the 3 lots that were created by consent, correct?
It could be substantial, given the cost of price of lots these days. Thank you for the information.
Okay, Member Hazelton.
Just a data point for the committee to understand. On March 7 of this year, Mr. Pescuso wrote to our clerk and copied in the planning department and his client requesting the waiving of the 5% parkland fee. So what he has just told us verbally that this has been an ongoing active request is in fact documented way back into March. So I don't think timing should be a consideration. And I think that we have exercised discretion on the Committee of Adjustment on matters similar to this. And I find it odd that we would be not wanting to be consistent with some of our previous decisions that deal with roads. And the magnitude of this land commitment and transfer of 20% of the land, I think is very substantial. It's a lot more land being transferred to the township than a previous matter that was considered last year. So I would be shocked if we didn't see a path forward to agree with the request for removal of that condition. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I guess a question to our planner with respect to the different interpretation of 20% versus 5% of the land that would, or the value of the land that would go towards parkland. Could you explain that difference? And if you're not able to, perhaps the agent can. Thank you.
We have selected Member Whitlib to respond.
Thank you.
Director Whitlib.
Thank you. Through the chair, to the committee, just not to conflate two separate issues. The amount of land to be conveyed for Baxter Loop Road, I don't disagree. I haven't calculated it, but it's 20% sounds about right. But that's needs to be conveyed because the township does not own the road. So in order for the consents to happen, that's a requirement. The 5%, however, comes out of the Planning Act for cash in lieu of parkland purposes. So two separate pieces here, two separate percentages for different reasons. I don't know if that answers the question, but the Planning Act requires either 5% of land to be conveyed for parks purposes, not roads purposes, but parks purposes. In this case, we don't need a park on Baxter Loop Road. So we're proceeding in accordance with the Planning Act and with accordance with the township's own policy to accept cash in lieu being 5% of the value of the lots.
So through the chair, if you don't mind a quick follow-up then on the sort of that road piece, is there any consideration being provided back to Mr. Cartier in terms of a tax credit or any other compensation?
Go ahead, Director Whitliff.
Through the chair to the committee, no, so pursuant to the township's practice and common municipal practice through Ontario, the lands are being conveyed to the township free and clear. There's no compensation or consideration back to the owner, and no policy or provision to authorize to do that.
Okay.
We had a further comment from Deb McCabe.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to also reiterate the fact to the committee that if this, okay, bottom line is Baxter Loop Road needs to be a municipal road. If it's not a municipal road, then these consents are not in conformity with our documents, the consents that were adopted. Like Mr. Whitliff said, the Planning Act focuses on the 5% of cash in lieu in parkland or a 5% of the property for a park. So the owner needs that to be a municipal road no matter what. Right? So that's where my way of thinking in my report is the fact that without that road being a municipal road, those lots that the committee created on March the 7th do not conform with our planning documents.
Okay, I think it's the planning department's appraisal that it's two separate issues. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a really big hand up from Mr. Schmidt. So please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I'm going to lower my hand now so I don't get reminded afterwards. I might this might surprise because sometimes I defend when potentially some unnecessary, in my opinion, sometimes some unnecessary fees are applied to potential developments and what have you. But I believe in this situation, it's quite common that if you take a severance, you get a road widening happens. That's something that's imposed as a condition for a severance, but it doesn't negate the 5% park dedication. When I reviewed all of this and went through it, I see that you've got a municipal road that was, or a road there that has always been. There's no extra taken from it. And the fact that, again, if that road was not created, there would not be these severed lots available for future development. I think there are two very different things. And I think it would be a dangerous slope if we waived the park dedication on something like this moving forward to further application. So we've got 95% of that stays in the owner's pocket. 5% goes to the tax coffers that are required. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Appreciate that insight. Member Predko, did you have a follow-up question? No, good. Member Jarvis, please.
I would venture that was Tony's 5%, not 2 cents. But having said that, I'm going back to comments made by planner Deb McCabe with regards to the road being a necessity to those lots being there. And then I'll put in the however, if that road had not existed and that person owned that property, he would be severing in a different way. And I presume developing in a different way that would be suitable to all parties involved. That road exists not only to their benefit in this situation, but to the benefit of others. It's a municipal road, and the goodwill of the owner, I think, has to be considered here. And I don't know what avenues he would have, excuse the pun, in addressing the situation if he were opposed to having that road now go through his property when he found out that's what it was doing. So I see a significant amount of goodwill that's got to be considered here. I don't know how we consider it. The cash in lieu of parkland, I know we've waived it on another piece of property on the Honey Harbor Road within the last, I don't know, two or 3 years, 1 year, yeah. So we have done it before. Member Schmidt's comments are well taken. I grapple with that, and I agree with Deb. Those lots would not exist except for that road. But as I said, if the road didn't exist, I'm sure the owner would have found a different way to develop that property, and perhaps to the betterment of his coffers anyway. They would be land facing Honey Harbor Road and might be even a bit more valuable that way. I don't know. I'm a bit torn on this, but I appreciate that there's some goodwill we've got to consider on behalf of the owner of this property. That's a good hunk of land that's being given up one way or the other. And of course, he's not the only benefactor. There are others as well.
Thank you very much. Member Matthews, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jarvis, I'm wrestling with this one. The road, Ms. McCabe, the road already exists. It's already there, right? But Mr. Cartier owns it. And so now he's giving it to the township. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in order to create the lots, he requires that to be a municipally owned and maintained road.
So who maintains it right now?
The municipality.
Okay, so Mr. Cartier owns it, the municipality uses it, the municipality cares for it, clears the snow, and we're saying there's no value to that. He should have to pay us another 5%. That I'm wrestling with.
Yeah. No, I understand
Trying to
what
be
you're saying.
fair here. I
Yeah,
understand.
no, I understand what you're saying.
We could all use more money, Mr. McCabe, right? Including the township. So, but I also don't want to hamper the development rights of the owner at this point. So, thank you for that clarity. Not sure it helped.
I see a hand up in the distance, and if you would wish to make a comment, please come up to the microphone, give us your name, address, and please proceed with the comment you have.
Okay. My name is Vince Cartier. I'm the owner of the property and owner of the road. The property has been in our family since 1900, and we've paid taxes on it since 1900, which is 123 years. And I just found out last fall that we've been in fact liable for anything insurance-wise. Half the liability is on us for that road. And along with that, in the bigger parcel of the property, there's also 40 acres of protected environment land, which should also be noted as parkland that we also pay taxes on the property, right? So it's not like we haven't contributed. And one more thing is that when my dad was younger and his dad, there was pockets of soil that helped build that road to where it is now to maintain it. So that was put forward as well. So it wasn't just all township maintenance. Thank you. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Cartier, for your comments. And we have a member, Predco. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Cartier, for your comments and the history. It's always important to understand where things are and how we got to where we are. And I guess the only other comment I have is it would appear that the township of Georgian Bay has a number of municipal roads that are unwittingly not owned by the township, that we've found through processes like this, that they are actually personally owned. And so I guess my concern would be, as we go forward making a decision today, whether or not we think we're making a precedent or not, we may very well be, because we could be seeing a few more severed lots and that are abutting roads that turn out to be owned by not by the township, but by the landowner. So I guess I just want us to be cautious and careful when we talk about, we've made a precedent before. Do we want to set a precedent for township roads that aren't owned by the municipality going forward? But having said that, I appreciate that it is something that the family has provided the township benefit of, and yet at the same time the township has maintained maintenance and responsibility for it for this period of time. So they haven't had use of it, and whether it's a case of adverse possession or whatever, I don't think I'm coming to a conclusion on this statement, other than the fact that we have similar situations, and we just need to be careful how we're dealing with it today to make sure we're being consistent for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Predco. And as Member Jarvis mentioned, we have had recently and over the last few years a number of occasions where we're faced with this same situation. And there's a history here as to when, the various property lines were established. I think we went back in the 70s when the Ontario government put in monuments as reference. And there's a lot of this out there, and I'm sure there's lots more of these properties. But I think our precedent has already been set by the cases that we've had in the past. So I don't think we're setting any precedent here by our decision on this particular application. Is there any further questions or comments before we proceed? A quick question from Member Jarvis. Please go ahead.
Could the Committee of Adjustment recommend a cash in lieu of parkland amount less than 5%, or are we bound by the 5%?
Through the chair to Councilor Predco in the committee. So the township has a cash in lieu of, thank you. The township has a cash in lieu of parkland policy, and that only provides for 5%. And I say that because sometimes municipalities do have written into their cash in lieu of parkland policy for simplification of the severance process. Often I've seen where there's a fixed amount per lot. It's a dollar figure. We don't have that. Those who are on council may recall the Director of Finance mentioning that we are looking at updating and revising our cash in lieu of parkland policy. But currently the only thing we have to work with is a township policy that meets the Planning Act but speaks to 5% of land or the value thereof.
But could Committee of Adjustment suggest that amount be adjusted? In other words, cash in lieu of be kept in place, but at an amount less than 5%. Could that be a request from Committee of Adjustment?
I'm gonna suggest that through the chair. So, and I appreciate how this matter, it's a delicate one and bounce between the committee and council as the applicant's agent has indicated. And of course, that's because the decision is by the committee. It's an arm's length committee, but council, it's a council policy in terms of cash into parkland. So the process is what it is. I think what this committee has heard is that council, through their consideration of the matter, is willing to waive. So if there's something else, a middle ground that the committee wants to suggest, I think that would, I can't speculate on an amount, but I think that would probably differ than the direction council provided.
So we have to go back to council.
Yeah.
No, thanks. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's tantamount to us, modifying the existing, so I think, again, for simplicity, we have a situation here where the applicant is required in order to move forward to provide the township with 20% of, or close to 20% of the proposed land at no charge. And is being asked to pay the 5% cash in lieu of parkland. And that is really the core question that we need to answer yes or no. And I haven't really read this resolution, but I'm going to read the resolution and let's make sure that that is clear in this resolution. So be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment has received the request from Andrew Pascuzzo of Pascuzzo Planning, Inc., agent for Vincent Cartier, owner, to remove condition 6 on the approved decision for consent files B 23-32, 33, and 34 as it relates to payment of 5% in lieu of parkland dedication for the severed lands in accordance with section 51(1) of the Planning Act and the Township of Georgian Bay bylaw 88.74. And please pay attention to the wording here, and that the Committee of Adjustment deny the request to remove condition 6 as of the 5% in lieu of parkland dedication, add to the parkland needs of the municipality, and the owner had opportunity to appeal any one of these conditions of approval during the 20-day appeal period, which commenced March 7th, 2024 and ended March 27th, 2024. So just to be clear on the way this resolution is written, if we approve, if everybody votes to approve, then we're denying the removal of condition number 6. So let's not be confused about that. So yeah, it's one of those. So if
I vote yes, then
you don't vote, yeah, if you vote yes, you vote no. So in other words, if we go with the way this thing is written, if you would like to remove condition 6, you do not vote in favor, you vote against. Okay, are we all clear on that?
However, we would need another resolution. I don't see it in the package.
It's in the report.
It's in the report, okay.
So we need to approve two resolutions. Okay, let's deal with resolution number 1, which is the one here. And again, let me just read the second part of this so we're clear. And the second part asks that the Committee of Adjustment denies the request to remove condition 6 as the 5% in lieu of parkland dedication and so on. So I will ask for a vote. All those in favor of approval of this application, please signify by raising your hand. I'm reading as per this. It was poorly written. Whoever did it, I don't know if they're here. So we have one member.
Two.
Oh, who's the other one? Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Okay. All right, we have two members.
Put it closer to the.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to put your hand closer to the microphone. The camera, yeah. All right, so based on that, the motion is defeated. And as a result of that, the condition number 6 is to be removed from.
No,
It's to remain.
no, it's to remain.
Yes.
So now we need another resolution
Yeah.
to remove it. And where is that resolution?
I will read it for you guys.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to read the next resolution that we have drafted here. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment has received the request from Andrew Pecuzzo, Pecuzzo Planning Inc., agent for Vincent Cartier, owner to remove conditions number 6 on the approved decision for consent files B 23-32, B 23-33, and B 23-34 as it relates to the payment of 5% in lieu of park land dedication for the severed lands in accordance with section 51(1) of the Planning Act and Township of Georgian Bay bylaw number 8874. And that the Committee of Adjustment approve the request to remove condition number 6 as the owner is conveying to the township a 20-meter wide right-of-way containing the traveled portion of Baxter Loop Road that traverses the property to provide year-round municipal road access for the newly created parcels.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. So I see 1, 2.
Yes.
Was it to remove 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so we have 5. The motion is carried. And the decision to remove condition number 6 is approved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Our final resolution of the day is moved by member Jarvis, seconded by member Rivet. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now at 12:26 p.m. Adjourn the meeting until July 12th, 2024 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.